Hello, this is Ed. I'd like to welcome you to week 5 of our course. We're going to be covering 3 chapters this week. Chapter 11 focuses on communication, 12 on the concept of leadership, and trust me, one chapter on leadership is nowhere near. We could spend literally 4 years talking about the concept of leadership in a variety of courses. So we're going to just get a taste of some of the basic superficial concepts, but they're important nonetheless. Chapter 13 naturally leads then into power and politics. So let's go back to chapter 11 on the concept of communication. You know, we've all heard the term, you hear it in organizations all the time, there's a lack of communication in the organization. Well, I challenge that because when you think about the many different ways we have of communicating, not only in the past, but definitely today, there's the written format, the memo, email, text, instant messaging, Skype, different webinars you may participate in passively or actively. Social media, without a doubt, has had a tremendous impact on communication. There's a wealth of communication going on, which often leads, to what's often termed as information overload. A reality of our workplace today that is drastically different than what was experienced, say, in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s is the difficulty in controlling the message from the top down. It's almost as if you use an analogy, you're trying to herd cats. If you've never had the pleasure of trying to herd a dozen cats to go a certain direction, well, good luck. It's almost impossible. It is possible to have them go in a direction, but again, there's got to be a very well orchestrated means of communicating to the masses, both upwards and downwards within an organization. And then when you throw in the aspect of social media, everybody nowadays has the ability to communicate, and not just to each other. Each one of us, anybody really with access to any social media platform, we see it every day, every hour, every minute of the day. A Twitter comment, a Facebook post, a video on YouTube that goes viral. The world has drastically changed, I think really for the better. Things have become very transparent, but it also creates a host of challenges, and we all heard the term fake news. Anybody and everybody can express their opinion, and as we all know, anybody and everybody does. So it really creates challenges in today's organizations, and definitely challenges for today's leaders in managing the message in a way that conveys the message you want people to hear and understand. That doesn't mean you're looking to mislead them. I don't mean to imply that, just the opposite. What's really critical, and a point I can't overestimate enough for you as a leader in your organization, either now or in the future, and whether you want to believe it or not, you are a leader. I don't care what your job is. You are a leader in whatever role you're in, be it your family, be it some social groups you're with, be it your work organization. You are a leader. You do have the ability to influence others, and that's part of a definition of what a leader is. So a key fact I want to stress with you that I can't stress enough, if you want your message to resonate and you want your message to be believed by the people you're communicating to, you have to earn their trust, you have to maintain their trust, and that is both in good times and bad. People are not adverse to hearing bad news. They are adverse to hearing bad news that's being manipulated, or bad news or news of any type that's being somewhat misleading, where you're not sharing the truth. People may not believe you when you convey the message, hence the importance of trust. The more trust you have built up with people you're leading, the much greater likelihood that while they may not like what you're telling them, they will believe you when you say it. And I cannot emphasize that point enough. You have to build trust, which takes time, in many cases, years of time, where you're consistently being honest with people in a sincere, open manner. So again, we'll cover that quite a bit in chapter 11. Chapter 12, we really begin to delve into the concepts of leadership. We'll talk about different leadership theories. There's, just as on motivation, the previous chapter, there's probably more written on the concept of leadership, more books written on the concept of leadership than you could ever possibly imagine. The Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. has literally thousands and thousands and thousands of books all on the topic of leadership. So again, it's obviously very important in any organization and in anybody's life. So we'll talk about those theories of leadership. You'll get exposed to some of the more commonly known theories. We'll talk about how charisma. We see charismatic leaders today, just as we have in our past over thousands of years. A charismatic leader, for good or bad reasons, can lead a group to a very positive outcome, but sadly, a very charismatic leader can lead a group to a very disastrous outcome. So we'll talk about the power of charisma and how it interrelates with concepts of leadership, as well as the concept of mentoring. We all have the ability to lead, and in many cases, the role of a mentor is a leader role. It's a leadership role. We're helping guide and form traits and behaviors and skills with individuals we work with. So like I said earlier, we're all leaders in one form or fashion. Whether we want to admit we wear that title, we all are leaders. Chapter 13 then delves into the concepts of power and politics. Leadership really has two forms. There is personal power or positional power. You know, positional power, when you are given the title of supervisor or manager, you immediately have positional power. But that can be very superficial. People may do what you tell them to do because you're their boss. That doesn't mean they're going to do it from the heart. They'll do it through their physical actions, they'll do it mentally, but they may not be passionate about it. To get that passion, you really need to have the personal power that comes into play. And again, it goes back to one concept of, do people trust that you have the knowledge, the experience, and do they trust that you have their best interests at heart when you're asking them to do something? If the answer to that is yes, they will follow you not just because you're their boss. They're going to follow you because they trust you and they know you have the best intentions for whatever it is you're asking them to do. We'll also talk, though, about how power affects people. Not a minute goes by where you don't look at the news in the every day that we experience and see power being used very wisely, and sadly, power being used very unwisely. So again, a lot of different concepts we're going to talk about this week. All concepts that will be near and dear to your mind and your heart when you consider how you will exercise your power in your organization, in your family, in groups you have in your community. And again, the concept of power and politics go hand in hand. You can't avoid the political environment, be it in an organization, be it in a church setting, be it in a community activity. The politics of any group always are readily seen when you get a group of people together. So again, chapter 13 will delve into the concept of politics and how it interrelates with power. The logistics of the course, again, we have 2 discussion questions this week, as we do each week. The first discussion question will talk about communication challenges that you'll face in organizations. The second discussion question talks about leadership challenges. So again, directly tied to the chapters we're covering. And the paper you'll be writing delves into a concept of how there's differences in communication style. Masculine communication style versus feminine communication style. I believe the book uses the term male and female. I prefer masculine and feminine communication style, because while we may attribute it to a gender by name, it does not necessarily mean that the style we choose to use matches our gender. So for me, for example, if you look at the definition of masculine communication style versus feminine communication style, I without a doubt have more of a feminine communication style in how I communicate to individuals. I, for example, invest a lot of time in listening skills, and again, as you look at learning more about the styles, you'll find that women by far tend to listen more empathically. And I've learned over the years in human resources that's a trait I developed that greatly aided me in being able to be successful in the job that I did day in and day out. Recognizing emotions that the individual is conveying is another key aspect of a feminine communication style that, again, I adapted and adopted and made it my own as I worked for many years within the human resource field. It doesn't mean one style is better or worse than the other. It's just important that you understand there are differences, and then you can begin to assess what style you want to adopt. And it doesn't mean you choose one or the other. You can very easily use both. I mean, I do as well. And again, it's also situational based. So the leadership concepts we'll be describing, the communication styles, again, it's important to state that one style may fit one situation. You may find you have to drastically change your communication style and leadership style when you're faced with a different situation. So again, this week you'll also be submitting your paper. If you'll notice, you do not have a assignment for your term paper. I do suggest you begin formulating and working on your rough draft for your term paper. You'll be submitting that in week 6. So begin to work on your rough draft this week as well, rather than just wait till week 6 to do it. So again, a lot of topics we'll be covering this week. I hope you enjoy week 5 as much as you've enjoyed the previous weeks, and I'll see you in the classroom.